happen that wouldn't otherwise happen. But we can kind of help with equity. So if that's more where your head's at, give to a foundation. But I really think that it depends on what's important to you, where you should be giving. And then I think you had listed the ACLU. I think that if you start to hear about things like the transgender ban being looked at by them, or if I know Betsy DeVos has made some concerning statements regarding civil rights in schools during some hearings. So if any of that starts to come to light, or you hear of the ACLU having to go after the department because of that, that might be a good place to put your money to support their effort if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone out there is looking to support a really specific project, my kid's school is trying to build a playground. I can put a link up for that as well. I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed by all the money I'm being asked to give already to a specific school. And I think, I happen to be sending my kids to a school where I'm paying tuition, but I'm sure that happens at all schools everywhere. There's a lot of fundraisers and walkathons or whatever, and then your kids want to buy snacks for Spirit Day or whatever, so there seems to be a lot of opportunities for giving when you're a parent.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, are we still scaring you, Sophie?
A little bit. A little bit. I realized looking through my Facebook feed this fall that people seem to be expected to sell candy for their schools, and I was like, wait, what? I don't sell things.
Wrapping paper, cheese and sausage.
Oh, I like the wrapping paper. That's good stuff.
Oh yeah, we had wrapping paper at one point.
I mean, next weekend I get to go to a Wines and Steins for my kids' school, so it's not all bad stuff.
No, my foundation hosted beer and barbecue, so see, it's not all bad.
All right. Well, I think that's a good way to end our conversation with wine and beer.
It all goes back to wine and beer.
Always. Should have called it Two Winos Talking Politics. So I really want to thank you guys for joining us. This has been a really enlightening and useful conversation, I think. And I would not be at all surprised if we return to the topic of education, not infrequently during the, I was going to say Trump years. God, I hope it's not multiple years.
Can I just say thank you for that? Because it feels like with everything that's going on, education just gets buried. My husband, and I don't know if this is actually true or not, but he swears, he always says, you remember the 2000 election was actually about education. And it feels like since then we don't really talk about it much. It comes up like this, like between parents, and it comes up from time to time, but there's not ever a lot of time to sit down and look and say, what are we doing here? We're trying to create an informed citizenry. Are we achieving that goal, and what can we do to make sure that we are? So thank you.
Well, I don't know if this makes you feel better or worse, but the first time I ever called my senator was over the DeVos confirmation. I had never called a representative of mine ever, and I was so incensed by it that I called, and that started this whole snowballing effect of now I call Ron Johnson every week, and his aides know me, so I'm, I got excited about it. I'm sure other people are.
So if Betsy DeVos hadn't been nominated, we might not have this podcast at all, is what you're saying, Sophie.
I guess I should thank Betsy DeVos. Thanks, Betsy. I know.
All right. So thank you, Alison, and thank you, Shannon. You've been terrific guests.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This was great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as always, listeners, if you would like to respond to anything we've talked about or suggest other things we could talk about in the future, you can email us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at twobroadstalk. You can find us on Facebook at Two Broads Talking Politics Podcast. We're everywhere, is what I'm saying. And we would very much like to be in conversation with our listeners.
And make sure you review and star our podcast on your podcast listening service of choice, such as iTunes. That would really help people find us.
Yes, absolutely, especially iTunes. We now have 2 reviews on iTunes, so we're coming up in the world.
Awesome.
I may or may not personally know both of those reviewers, but they have listened to the podcast, so they're real reviews. So yes, please review. And we may have exciting news soon about our growing media empire, so stay tuned for that, listeners. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks, you
Yeah.
guys.
Our theme music is called Sweeter Vermouth and was composed by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. It is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Our logo was created by Matthew Weflin, expressly for Two Broads Talking Politics, and is copyright 2017. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or at twobroadstalk on Twitter. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and TuneIn. Please let us know if you have any trouble finding us.